Hey, everybody. I am super excited to be chatting with Colin Bannon of BT Group. Colin's an industry legend. So, really excited to have you here, Colin. How are you?
Very good, thanks, Evan. And I hope it is as warm as it looks in the background.
I am in Barcelona and it is clearing up. So, this is not my actual background, but sunny skies ahead. So
Good.
excited to chat today. There's a lot happening at BT to say the least. Before that, maybe introductions are in order to
Sure.
your long and storied career at BT Group. And what are you up to these days?
Well, goodness. Evan, thanks. For my sins, I'm the CTO for BT Business, which is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the coolest jobs in telecoms. With the variety and scope and challenges that we have, and the amazing customers, and the pace of change, it is a super cool role, and I'm very, very lucky to have it. And by way of introduction, my background, they've stopped calling me new boy. And I've just in the next month, it'll be 20 years in BT. But
Wow.
prior to that, a number of different technology companies across aspects of IBM, Unisys, things like that, as well as some New York-based networking consultancies. These days, you'll see me on numerous technology boards. I actually also am sitting on the board of the MEF this year,
Mm.
because the focus of the MEF this year, as you probably know, will be on NaaS, Network as a Service, with all the other brilliant telcos out there on, and we're working on that. In fact, we just had the G&E summit last week in Dallas, which we've all just flown back from. Probably crossed you across the water as we went, and also do a little bit of teaching at university.
Wonderful. Well, let's dive in because what an incredible topic, network as a service. It is
Sure.
intriguing. People have different views and definitions,
Yeah.
but it's getting a lot of attention lately. Give us a rundown on what it is and why it's becoming really critical for managing multi-cloud setups.
Sure. And I probably should start with a bit of a primer on network as a service. I see network as a service, there's probably three versions of it right now, three major classification layers. We'll call them layers for now. There is the network as a service that we are investing in. I'm going to talk about the middle one mostly in a minute, but there is the optical layer of network as a service. So if you think about the current sort of models that you see are sort of fire and forget. You set it up and you tear it down 10 years later. In these modern worlds with AI and intra data center connectivity, there needs to be new models. And obviously in the UK, we've been building like fury and fiber first across the UK, having new models for optical circuits that you're able to actually be programmable and addressable and flexible, that can actually change bandwidth without actually having people turning up and touching things and being human specific. That's going on right now, at the optical layer. But the layer above is really where you've probably heard global fabric, which is the sort of layer two and layer three for medium business, large business, and global multinationals. And that is our once in 15 years complete reimagining of our network. And I'll talk about that mostly during this conversation that we're having. And then sitting above that is the sort of, well, I would argue, and many of the fixed architects out there would argue, our friends in the mobile world kind of appropriated the term NaaS. So NaaS started in fixed, but you'll see the lovely vendors like Ericsson and others have been using, and the GSMA for the last couple of years have been using the term NaaS for programmable API based and mostly network monetization of mobile networks as well, which we could have an episode in of itself. But really, probably what I wanted to talk about today was network as a service for layer 3 IVPN, for basically the fabric of how enterprises connect with each other. And that's a really, really exciting area. What BT has done, as I said, is reimagined what it looks like and what the needs are for the next 15 or 20 years. And as you know, with AI, with distributed workloads around cloud, with security challenges, more than ever, you need a network. It's a prerequisite for AI to work. You need things to be able to work on these things. You need the network there to be sensitive to all the new challenges that are coming. And simply put, what we've done with our network is we have taken a multi-service core, which is not that new, and we've re-platformed a multi-service core. Many other telcos do that, but we've actually built it fully programmable, and we've made that black box that the core is programmable, just like SD-WAN. We've abstracted the controller rather than it being on each node, and created a new language to do amazing new things that the core of telco networks could never do. As you probably imagine, and what you've probably heard before is, cores are really efficient at moving packets around, but they've never really understood what the customer's requirements are. They only look on the outside of those packets, look at the tags, and forward it on. What we've been able to do is actually create a new language to solve a number of different emerging use cases and create a programmable platform that is fit for purpose for the future. And I'll get into that in a little bit more with a few use cases in a minute. So the core is there and it is being reimagined, but it is multi-service. What's really also interesting is the edge. The edge is now multi-service. And what I mean by that is we've collapsed 4 different edge platforms and different systems down into one. ELAN, E-line, MPLS, or IVPN as some people call it, and the internet, all into one platform. And that solves a number of challenges that BT had. One is complexity and the speed that it takes when you add new devices or new technologies to the cores of your network. The amount of times you actually have to test before you can actually launch new services. It increases our agility and reduces our cost to serve. From a platform perspective, just imagine, we provide services in over 180 countries around the world. It's one of the largest enterprise networks that there are in the world, if not the largest. And in each of these locations, there is a cost to BT to serve our customers. And right now, there is inherently what we've had in the past was an inefficiency. There was a real estate issue, which I'll talk about in a sec, and then there was a platform scalability issue. So imagine, say, in Singapore, where I have one physical rack where I might be, say it's the internet rack, and that's getting towards 80% utilization. And then I have an MPLS rack next to it, to be 10% utilization. Now, there's no way, even if it's the same hardware, and often it is, because they're on different platforms and different stacks, they evolved inorganically from each other. I can't use that spare capacity that is on the MPLS rack to help out the internet rack. I actually have to send a truck rollout and spend more CapEx, spend more time. There's a delay for our customers of service. By collapsing this down into one platform and taking a real platform approach, it's now much more horizontally scalable. And part of the way we've done that, part of the clever stuff that's behind this that our developers and our platforms teams have done is we've abstracted the concept of a port from the protocol. So that port stays sticky for the lifetime of the customer, but we can spin up whatever protocol. It doesn't matter to us whether a customer buys MPLS or Ethernet or Internet or a combination of those against the port. Now we can serve any of them. And then if you look at that rack, you might actually see a port that has MPLS. The next one is Internet. The next one is that. We defragmented all that dead space and all the power that it consumes. We've gotten rid of all the compute and the stacks that are doing that, with this much more simpler and focus on the resilience and the security rather than the complexity of what a traditional network will see. Many telcos are looking at a digital transformation. There are virtually no telcos out there that have actually gone and looked at the core of their network and the points of presence where we're changing all of them. A few of them are changing the head ends in terms of their key POPs that connect to cloud. So that is the platformatization and the simplification to make this far more scalable. The second part was the real estate issue, was most telcos, when they designed their POPs, they were in the age of when the data center was the center of the universe. Now, of course, things have moved on with cloud and now with AI, and the flows are different. So we're actually changing the locations of where we originally designed our global POPs to be co-located with the edge of the cloud in the same building, tightly coupled with fiber into the cloud data centers, so that we're able to spin up services. So we're not long lining and acting as aggregation nodes and then long lining and every time. We're reducing the hops between our customer and the cloud and making it super easy to spin up additional services and also be hyper connected at the nodes where there are super interconnections between all the ISPs and the mobile providers and the SaaS providers and the cloud providers and the AI providers and the private compute providers. It also allows us to spin up additional value add services for compute-based virtualized service insertion layer behind our big PE nodes, our provider edge nodes. So this is the landing zone and the footstep to the cloud where we're creating our service provider mesh. That's really exciting for us because it allows us to do new things, allows us to connect much more easily. It reduces our cost to serve, and it makes us much more efficient. Now, combining all of those now allows us to build our new network that we're building like fury, and we're going through releases of launches right now, is using about 76% less electricity than the last network. Now, we can calculate with our carbon calculator, our dashboard, that this is the most efficient megs or gigs per watt global network there is in the world today. And that's also very exciting for the future for our customers who are starting to wrestle with their scope 3 commitments. You can sort of solve your scope 1 and 2 yourself for in terms of your carbon, your net zero carbon commitments. But when you start to get to your scope 3, you really need your partners to lean in. And we're able to issue certificates for our customers to show they've gone from this level and reduced significantly down to a future state there. We want to be part of that journey of getting them to net zero. And this new network is an excellent tool to be able to achieve that. Those are just some of the things. Now, I said I would give you a hint around use cases for solving for future things. So there's a couple of things. I've just talked about the ESG, the green commitments. Resilience into cloud is huge. In every zone that we're building, we're connecting to be the most interconnected to the cloud of any network in the world. And not only that is we're having dual resilient, and not just resilient, but diverse. So in other words, separate failure planes. So all these hidden bottlenecks that connect customers to cloud, where if you have a failure, you have to fail out and go to a different zone and then tunnel back via the hyperscaler's backbone and get back into cloud. We're getting rid of all of that. We have resilience and diversity within that zone. So that means there's at least 2 landing zones to every cloud data center of the big cloud providers everywhere around the world. That makes a big difference to experience because current models is most connections into cloud, you only have 1 in each zone, and they rely resilience means fail out of that zone, trombone around to get to your workload. And that could add hundreds of milliseconds in terms of round trip delay and turn your customer's experience into unacceptable application and user experience. We've solved for that. We're investing for that. This is something why the DIY users can't really compete with the commitment of a service provider who really gets in all behind that. What we want to be is the hyperscaler for the global fabric of networking to transform the experience of cloud. Now, on to the use case. I'll give you a couple, but remember I talked about the abstraction of the control. Today,
Mm.
MPLS nodes calculate the next hop based on BGP and other protocols, routing protocols, based on each hop. They calculate it. So the control plane and the data plane is tied together. What we've done is abstracted those two planes, and we have a segment routed core and an abstracted path computation, very highly resilient around the world. But those path computation is the brains, and we've created a language to address that, to actually inject new paradigms of how people want to work, to solve new business outcomes with essentially a new business language, to inject business intent into what was a black box, an unaddressable part of the customer's journey. What examples of that could be? Well, I'll give you one, and then I'll stop there and pause for breath. Today, you have overlay solutions as well as the underlay that we've been talking about. And those overlay solutions often use SD-WAN or SASE. And one of the brilliant things about that is the hardware and software that is controlling that overlay network is looking at the application performance and the link performance of that. And if you have a customer site that has two links, you often have something like smart path control or other equivalents, depending on the vendor, that will make a choice between one connection and another. They control that hop based on the experience. So if there's a degradation on one connection, it'll flip it over to the other connection to recover the service. Now, what people don't necessarily realize is that can only control the first hop. There may be another 21 hops on the middle mile and the core and out to the other side that SD-WAN can't solve for. SD-WAN is at the mercy of whatever the underlay is and whatever's going on in the underlay. And the two just don't talk to each other. And we found over the last 5 years in particular, working with the very biggest customers, that you get better outcomes if you extend that control into the underlay. But you need to reimagine what your core is. And that's what we've done. So this allows us to do new things on every hop of the journey. And in fact, we're talking to some of the biggest vendors right now and developing with them so that there is a feedback loop from the overlay to the underlay, which has never been done before. And that's super exciting. But in terms of control and the language, what examples? Well, you've heard about data sovereignty, right? But data sovereignty up until this point is particularly big in Europe and other parts of Asia Pacific. Data sovereignty up until this point, and the regulators are getting really serious about this. Data sovereignty is being about data at rest. In other words, is the hard drive that holds that data that is sovereign to that country, is it actually held in the country that it's supposed to be sovereign to, or the region? Whether it be geophys mining data or sensitive customer financial information, whatever. That's been the point. So in other words, I'll use an example of Germany, but I could use France or China or whatever. The use case up until this point is the user who's in Germany, are they accessing that sovereign data on that hard drive in Germany? However, the regulators are now going, well, hang on a sec. What if that user is on one ISP and the data center is on another ISP, and the primary German interconnection point between those two ISPs, the peering, breaks? So what happens in failure mode? And they've analyzed what's happened in failure mode. And there's a lot of regulation coming down, whether it be DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, or some of the acts around Cyan Internet in Switzerland. And they said, well, hang on a sec, what about data in motion? What's happening to those packets in failure mode? And they realized that there's scenarios that the internet is a beautiful thing. It was built to survive a nuclear war, right? It's inherently self-healing. It'll reconnect and reroute, but it's geographically ignorant. So part of the things I had to wrestle with is how do you reconcile the internet in a world of deglobalization and a world that is becoming uh, uh, greater cyber threats from that perspective. And so how do you solve for that? Because that German experience in a failure mode, those packets could be going via Russia between the user in Germany and the data center in Germany. So how do you
Mm.
control that? You cannot solve that with an overlay. You cannot solve that with SD-WAN. You cannot solve that with SASE. So how do you solve that? You actually need a programmable underlay, and you need the two together to deliver better outcomes for your customers. So the regulators, one customer of mine, very large bank, and I won't mention their name, they said the regulators hunt in packs. They go away to these conferences, they talk to each other over a drink, and they'll share notes. So if you get a piece of regulation in Singapore, it very soon within 6 months, you might see a similar regulation turn up in Indonesia. Now, the problem is with the large multinationals is they have 180 different regulators hitting them who don't necessarily understand the operational cost to their IT within that year when they pass these, because for some reason they'll share ideas, but they won't implement them themselves. So data sovereignty today in Europe is slightly different or very different in each country, and you need different responses for each. So you can't just have one tool to fit, and that's why the hyperscalers have struggled with data sovereignty, is because it's nuanced within the regulatory regime. But just think, over the next couple of years, the regulators are going to extend from data at rest into data in motion. And our networks do not have a solution for that today. Now, we've solved for that in our network, where we can literally take the flows of data and geofence them, take the business intent of our customer and start making our core working for it. And you need a deep mesh to make this work. By the way, certain banks have solved for this in the past, but it's really expensive. In other words, buying one or two point-to-point links within that country. But it's unsustainable from a uptime, an availability, and an operational resilience. And it's imagine if you could just get that as part of your internet circuit. And then you have some additional fine-grained controls to inject your intention to say, these flows, I want to stay within the geographic bounds of Germany or UK or wherever, or that's a war zone. I don't want any of my packets to go in that area. And you can also do no-fly zones. Or if you had two really important telemetry streams, like you're doing destructive testing of a jet engine or something like that in region, and you need to make sure that that stream is not interrupted. So there's a concept of disjoint paths over your network, so that it's a bit like Ghostbusters. You never cross the two streams, right, of the two guns. We can now enforce that there are paths through all the tens of nodes to get it across the world, but they'll never use the same node. So there's this new language that we have that's just emerging, that's solving for problems now around lowest cost, most efficiency, fastest converge, but also just what's coming next in the next year or two, which is the sovereignty aspects and the disjoint paths. And it's also a platform to innovate over the next 10 years plus. And that's the sort of platform thinking and the transformation, as well as a digital front end and an API-driven first platform that is highly integrated with our partners. It's a real reinvention. And of course, the last thing I'd say is telcos are very good at when they re-platform of just taking the old features and put them on the new. This time we were determined to actually, and then think about the new things 2 or 3 years later. This time we're determined to do that day one when we were ripping up the blueprint. And trust me, this is heavy lifting. This is not easy to do because it's a cultural change whether it be our portfolio owners who used to just like to have their own stovepipes and they controlled their P&L, now to a more of a horizontal platform, thinking more like the CSPs than an SP. And it's been a super fun journey, super challenging, but our customers love it, and they're really excited about the outcomes that we can deliver.
Wow, that's extraordinary. So let's talk outcomes and opportunities. Uh, when it comes to global fabric, which industries will see the biggest benefits the soonest? And are there certain customer profiles who will benefit maybe more than others early on?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I think one thing, you would think that they're very different. And they all are quite different verticals and industries, and they have different sort of affordability profiles. And we wanted to make sure that the unit economics were far better on this. And I'll talk about unit economics in a minute. But the one thing that unites all of them, almost all of them, is uh, there is no plan B anymore, right? So, you think about a big credit card company, when the connections were down, you used to have that little machine that you could take the triplicate paper and put the card down and put that on and get them to sign it and sort of frank it. They don't have those anymore. If the network connectivity stops, the revenue stops, the services stop, the planes stop flying, the insulin doesn't get delivered, the vaccinations don't get manufactured, the assembly lines stop. There is no plan B. So operational resilience is like number one for all of our customers. So one of the biggest things about the platform redesign is building on the history of trust that BT has had. BT is known for many things, but one of the biggest brand things, I think, is about the responsibility and trust that we hold, because we're aware of the souls that are in the planes. We're aware of the people who are in the field. We're aware of the ambulance calls, because we run our blue light services. We take millions of 999 calls, or 911 call equivalents. We run the emergency services, a very large part: fire, ambulance, police. The hospitals, our National Health Service in the UK, other hospitals around the world, including Australia, airlines, logistics, banking. If some of these big clearing apps fail, people's checks don't get paid at the end of the week. Mortgages don't get through. People's boards have to be called in front of Parliament or government if the money doesn't flow or the markets don't trade. There is no plan B here, and the importance of a network. An analyst, and I'm not going to take credit for this, an analyst recently wrote, because we have a bit of a, how would you say, a narrative challenge. Because the analyst said, the networks are like glass, right? Nobody can see them. They're transparent. They just work behind the scenes until they break and shatter. And then everybody knows about it, and everybody starts screaming. And that is truth, is that perhaps we've lost the value and the external narrative, that our CSP partners have done a brilliant job of being able to tell the story of how important cloud is, but somehow along the way we lost the story about how important the network is. And if you think about AI now and the distributed workloads that are cross AI and inference, that actually the network is now the computer, to steal the old Sun systems saying many years ago when they had the distributed approach. The network actually forms the new distributed AI brains that is going out there. And without the network there is doing it. And I think it's part of our job, yourself, Evan, as a brilliant spokesperson for the industry, to translate the importance of certain parts of the technology and what it means for people out there. And we need to do a better job of telling the story about what part the network has to play and the outcomes on that. So that is one. And in terms of industries that are wanting to take these, the ones that have complexity, the ones that have hybrid environments, i.e. legacy data centers, still mainframes, middleware, they might have microservices front end, they have applications that really need to be hybrid, they have maybe variable loads on their workload, so they need them to be flexible. They want a NaaS. So what a NaaS means for them is flexible terms, the ability to scale and then reduce and not be locked in. They want to have new ways of engaging with their network with visibility that they've never been able to see before. They want programmability. They want agility. So they want to be able to spin up new sites faster than they ever been done before. And they want to scale down as the market changes. So the network becomes a outcome-based competitive advantage rather than an anchor to slow them down from the business. Because in the past, the compute places, the compute partners could spin up new memory and new processors and new capability at the speed that the business wanted. And then you'd fill out a change form for a firewall change, and you have to wait 3 to 6 weeks and the network to come along. Um, we've 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 solved for that, and that's the area that we really think that our customers are demanding a new approach and a new fresh ideas. And so honest answer, all the major customer industries, whether they be manufacturing, pharma, health, fast moving consumer goods, banking in particular, or governments, defense, all of those areas have really gravitated, if nothing else, from the ability to take some of the friction away and the complexity and have a platform that is more relevant to them. Because that's the thing that keeps me up at night is how do we stay relevant, not just for our customers' problems today, but the customers' problems for the future.
Wow, that's sort of a mic drop moment, really. But I'll continue. I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
When I talk to folks out there, enterprises, service providers, I mean, enhanced customer experience seems to be one of the top 2, 3 topics. And it seems like Global Fabric can really help deliver a more consistent, reliable, responsive service to those end users. I mean, is that a sort of side benefit, or is that one of the main opportunities, do you think, with Global Fabric?
Well, I'd like to think that we started out from just doing a revenue upside with our business
Mm.
case. But as an engineer, it wasn't just growth that we went after. It was also pain, because we feel the pain every day when our customers struggle, right? And we've known for many years sitting on resolver bridges when there's an application experience challenge, and they've gone and outsourced to 20 different suppliers, and everybody's sitting on that bridge going, I'm green, I'm green, I'm green, I'm green, I'm green, and yet they're still having end user experience challenges. So I think part of the DNA of this reimagining of this was reimagining what customer service is. And one example of that was a very high proportion of our customers use ServiceNow for workflow and service desk and case management, etc., and catalogs. So we have at least 3 ways: APIs, portal-based, with a white glove service where we will do all the work for them as well, or an outsource-based managed network service, as well as an integration to ServiceNow and into the AI and the capabilities there, and dealing with that, so that they don't have to necessarily leave their tools, so
Mm.
that they have an integrated. So the full catalog of our services is published within their own working environment. So there's no swivel chair or desk movement. It's full integration with our partners with ServiceNow. And we were the first service provider to develop the sort of service provider modules into enterprises, that we were the lighthouse development partner with ServiceNow to do that, to deliver brilliant outcomes for our customers around what does service look like transformed going forward.
Mm.
And obviously with brilliant full stack observability plus um, um, strong overlay, and we have multiple partners for that, plus our USP, which is our brilliant global fabric with brilliant cloud interconnections. You put those together with seamless integration into your customer service platforms, you really do have a dynamite combination for brilliant outcomes for our customers around simpler service management.
Wow, fantastic opportunity. Shifting gears a little bit to the people side of the equation. I mean, you've led
Sure.
cross-functional teams and managed innovation projects, and of course, member and board member leader at the MEF, the MEF forum. Um, when it comes to innovation, what's been your approach here to success? Have you had to think differently about the way you innovate internally and externally at BT Group?
I think that there's a couple of thoughts around that. Is you start with the customer. So even though my role helping with defining what the product strategy is, going out there and getting your ass kicked in a bit or getting on those customer bridges is there's no better way. And all of our people who are in the office of the CTO are engaging with customers every day. The voice of the customer is supreme ultimately. And our own people who are at the coalface working with the customers every day, they actually have the answers. So removing the layers between the people who are doing the work and the people who are actually defining what's next and the customers themselves is paramount in terms of the approach. Because then you have people speaking their truth, creating a safe environment for people to be honest. Because let's face it, large organizations end up having a lot of sort of empty rhetoric, sort of political speak. They can deceive themselves as an institution. And moments of truth and honesty, moments that matter for the customer, and cutting through to really what matters for them, and then being honest about where you are, allows you to chart your way forward. And like I said before, is the teams that I work on, they all have a strong um, a strong cause for the customer and a strong resonance in terms of doing the right thing, both for BT, but most importantly for the customer, because ultimately that'll flow back for BT. And that allows you to be the trusted advisor, that there's an ethical passion that you're designing for things that are, so things like an SLA, an availability. Many folks out there design them commercially. In other words, they calculate what the penalty clause is and they'll factor that into the cost of the bid. We actually go about it this sort of the old school engineering way and actually calculate it from the bottom up. But then we can trust it, right? And that you can get in front of people who have very important tasks for their people and their customers, because it's our families that they're looking after, right? It could be our mother or our children in that plane that customer you're helping with, or it could be a family member who's calling the ambulance the next time. There is a cause here, and an ethical thread and a passion for actually driving change. So having a team that is motivated for something that is bigger than them rather than just self-interest, and that will still look after the bottom and top line. If you still have that as doing the right thing and being fully aligned with what's going to keep you relevant with the customers, then only good things can come from that.
Wonderful high note and important insight. Thanks so much, Colin, for joining and inspiring, and onwards and upwards. I can't wait to see how this unfolds to customers. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, Evan.
And thanks everyone for listening, watching, and sharing. And until next time, take care.